I'm Dr. Rashida L. Weaver. This talk is open to the Iona community, so other people may join in. So I'm Dr. Rashida L. Weaver, and I am the professor for the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Practice and Mindset class. And today we have an amazing guest speaker. I'm so honored to have her here. Her name is Stephanie Benedetto. And I will go over her, well, the topic of her talk is how waste impacts climate change, people, planet, and profit. And so now I'll actually give an introduction of our speaker. And so corporate attorney turned fashion tech and sustainability entrepreneur, Stephanie is the co-founder of Queen of Raw, a marketplace to buy and sell unused textiles, keeping them out of landfills and turning pollution into profit. Prior to starting Queen of Raw, Stephanie worked as a lawyer in the fashion, media, entertainment, startup, and technology industries and co-founded a sustainable textile manufacturing facility. An advocate for women in business and sustainability, her companies have been featured in NPR, Good Morning America, the New York Times.
You can shorten those. We don't need to know.
Amazing. I love this. I was so inspired reading this.
Oh, thank you.
Vogue, WWD, Elle, Cheddar, Parade, WCBS, United Nations, Fortune, Entrepreneur, Wired, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and Fast Company. Stephanie is a 2020 Inc. Female Founders 100, NASA, Nike, IKEA, Dell Launch Innovator, a Grand Prize WeWork Creator Awards winner presented by Ashton Kutcher, a Cartier Women's Initiative laureate, an MIT Solve Global Challenge winner, a climate change finalist in Mohammed bin Rashid's Initiative for Global Prosperity, a finalist for the Elevate Prize, a ThreadUp Circular Fashion Fund recipient, and an LVMH Innovation Award finalist. She's a member of Pledge on 1%, a New York Circular City Initiative, and founding member of Wildlife Friendly Enterprise Network, along with Avita, Caring, and Stella McCartney. It is a pleasure to invite you to our class. That is an amazing bio.
Oh, thank you.
And, I guess a virtual round of applause for our speaker.
Thank you all so much. And I'm really excited to be here chatting with you about my journey in entrepreneurship, sustainability, which is obviously near and dear to my heart and why I do what I do. And hopefully, also happy to get your feedback on thoughts on how you're thinking about things, right? I mean, with what's going on in the world right now today, we are clearly in a very unique time period, but I think in that it's also a massive, unique opportunity to build really cool, powerful businesses for the future that we're going to and to change the world. So hopefully, as we talk about my journey and a bit of what I've done with business, with technology, we can inspire each other. So to that end, I am going to share some slides just because I find it kind of helps keep thoughts a little organized. But when I do that, I'm not going to be able to see the chat. So if you want to have any questions, you don't need to raise your hand unless anyone disagrees. I'm happy to have you just come off mute and ask questions. If you prefer to wait till the end, I will certainly, I know this is an hour-long class, I believe, and I don't expect my talk to go more than half an hour, and then we can leave ample time for Q&A at the end if you prefer as well. But I do want to make this as meaningful to you and your journey and what you're thinking so that we can obviously inspire each other. So, like I said, feel free to come off mute and ask questions. We will have time at the end, and I will kind of jump in a little bit about who I am, what I'm doing, and what my journey has been like. So let me share my screen. Cool. All right. So let's chat a little bit. As I mentioned, my journey is a lot about fashion, technology, sustainability, and we're going to chat on how I got here. But before we do, I like to start with a very simple, but kind of a bold question, right? Are you naked right now? Okay, you're obviously not, unless you're maybe not on camera, because you're wearing fabric, clothing, right? If you think about it, our clothing materials, they are our clothes, it's the chair you're sitting on, the carpet under your feet, the interior of your car, fabric, materials, it's absolutely everywhere. So it's clearly right where it's supposed to be right now, covering things like us, including with our masks, right? These are life-saving things. But guess what? Fabric, textiles, it's also where it's not supposed to be. every single year, and this is the problem that my business is tackling and what has inspired me, $120 billion with a B worth of unused fabric just sits in warehouses collecting dust, or it literally gets burned or sent to landfill. And, you may look at this image and think that I'm just kind of talking about little scraps off a cutting room floor, so who cares? But in fact, this wasted inventory, unused textiles in fashion, it's so huge. When we quantified it, it actually eats up to 15% of a business's bottom line in just 1 year. And so on my entrepreneurship journey, right, you start with the problem. Clearly there's a big problem here, but it can't just be a problem that doesn't really matter to people. It has to be a problem that matters to businesses and to people. And so when we looked at the numbers at that volume, right, this waste, it isn't just environmentally irresponsible. This is a CFO business financial issue. And so that's kind of what I took as how I knew this was not only a big problem that I was passionate about that I wanted to solve, but it meant something to these businesses. It cost them a lot of money and we can do a lot better. So, clearly, just to give one example of waste, I don't know how many people saw this article in the New York Times, but in 2018, H&M burned $4.3 billion worth of unsold clothes in 1 year. They set it on fire. And I don't mention this because H&M should be a scapegoat by any means. There are a lot of people doing these things, and since they have made incredible movements and strides in trying to do better. But just to show you how big some of these problems are. And so as you're looking at the problems that you want to tackle as an entrepreneur, these obviously are the big headlines and kind of issues that are ripe for change with what's going on in the world today. And before I get into my entrepreneurial journey, just to talk about the environmental side of this problem. So clearly this problem of waste and unused textiles, which is what I've decided to tackle, is a big, painful problem for businesses' pockets. But it's also a really big problem for our drinking water. I don't know how many people know this, but fashion is actually the #2 polluter in the world of clean water globally. And it sits right behind oil and agriculture, which is #1. And fashion uses oil and agriculture, obviously. So it also contributes to the #1 polluter. So the long and the short of it is fashion is really bad. This image shows a river in China actually running red because of contamination from textile dyeing alone. And so I don't like to go too much into the scary statistics because I love the fact that we can do something about this, right? That's what I'm doing on my entrepreneurial journey. There's a problem, but I want to solve it. And how bad fashion is for water also means fashion has the power to literally solve the world's water crisis if we think about it differently. And one statistic I wanted to leave you with, if we continue at the current pace of textile production, by 2025, 2/3 of the entire world's population will face shortages of fresh water and be exposed to hazardous chemicals from textile production alone. And I mention that because when you're looking at a problem as an entrepreneur, right, you have to have a problem, but it has to be a problem that matters to people and that matters today, right? And so if you look at what's going on in the world with COVID right now, this issue and this pain point and this problem has only become even more important for businesses, right? Issues around sustainability, waste, supply chain, people and planet. This has become top of mind. And to me that, when you're looking at that problem, that's why the need to solve it matters now. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's just some of my learnings as an entrepreneur as you're looking at problems before you even get to the solution that you want to build. Okay, so how did I get into this crazy industry? What was my entrepreneurial journey? So here's a picture of me with my great-grandfather, Pappy. He actually, my family's been in fashion and in textiles for over 100 years. So in 1896, he actually came over on a ship from Austria. He landed at Ellis Island and he settled into the Lower East Side of New York. And he was an immigrant chasing the American dream, and he had to make a living for his family, right? So what did he do? He actually found materials and supplies nearby, old fabrics and furs and things that immigrants had brought over on the ships with them, but they weren't using anymore. and he would repurpose them by hand into the most beautiful fashion garments with minimal waste and minimal toxins, because he had to watch his bottom dollar and it depended on minimizing waste. And he sold these gorgeous goods to local customers. And a lot of his fur coats I still wear today, 100 plus years later. And I mention that because, truly the stories and the way he did business, and obviously your family, your history, your journey and your story is what's going to shape who you are as an entrepreneur and how you think about things. And he would tell me these stories growing up, and, it really inspired me. And of course, today's supply chains in any business that you are in, right? There's massive supply chains, hundreds of steps occurring across the globe, metric tons of water, right? Chemicals, crops, and oil are all used in the process. But our vision with my company, Queen of Raw, and with the solution that I want to build to this problem is how can we use technology to get back to the way my great-grandfather did business, right? He didn't talk about it as sustainability, but it certainly was at the end of the day. It was about being more local, more on demand, more customizable, and more sustainable. And it was a solution and a business model, which we'll talk more about, that really made sense for people, definitely made sense for a planet, but it also made sense for a business's profit. So that's kind of, what inspired me on my journey. I actually didn't do the family route originally. I ended up on Wall Street as a corporate attorney. But then in 2008, right, the market crashed. And much like what we're going through today, right, it was the height of like waste and greed and excess on Wall Street. And I took that as my opportunity to go out and build a business that I always dreamed of, and go change the world. And so I hope in what everyone's going through today and in how you think about entrepreneurship, there are these massive problems, but it doesn't mean that you can't be the one to solve them and that you won't solve them. You will, you can, and in many ways, the time is right, exactly right now. So kudos to you all for being here in that. Definitely, like I said, if you want to ask questions, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, now that we kind of talked about, my entrepreneurship journey in a quick nugget and the problem, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into how I thought about the solution, the technology we use, and then some of the challenges as an entrepreneur that I actually went through and how we solved them. So that's kind of where we're going, but definitely stop me with any questions. Okay, so what's the solution look like? So we have all this waste all over the world, right? All this unused fabric. What are we going to do about it? Well, I looked a lot at business models like Uber and Airbnb. And what do? They take resources that aren't being used, a car, an apartment, a house, right? Something that's not being used, and they just put it back into the chain of supply and demand using a marketplace and technology. Right? And people can get money by using some asset that wasn't being used before. And so that really inspired me. And with Queen of Raw, the way we started the company, and then we'll talk about the challenges, but the way we started it was, okay, let's build a marketplace. Let's connect all the players in the world globally in this digital marketplace where people can sell the unused fabric that they have, and they can turn around and buy what they need when they need it at a discount and keep all this stuff in circulation, right? So it doesn't get wasted. So, that's kind of how we thought about it when we started. And the idea is that, buyers quickly and easily can come and search in the marketplace, find the fabric they need at a discount, pick all these different materials from all over the world, from all these different suppliers, quickly and easily at your fingertips. See what's hot based on what's hot in the runways and in Fashion Week, and match it to the fabrics they want. And whether you're a student, maker, crafter, quilter, the biggest brands and retailers in the world, you can buy this stuff quickly and easily, create mood boards, get inspired by the unused inventory all over the world, and then click a button and buy it from all the suppliers. And suppliers love it because they're making money, right? They get to sell all this waste. They're doing good for people and planet because they're not burning it like H&M, and they're not going to get called out in the newspaper, but they're also making money selling it. So everyone wins economically, and it's also good for people and planet. So, okay, that's how we thought about it in the first place. as a marketplace. And then the fun comes in, right? As you're building any solution, especially if it's a solution with technology. And today, almost every business, right, has some form of technology in what they do. Then we got to play around with some fun technology tools. And we did cool stuff like every e-commerce site does with, intelligent searching, product recommendations, marketing, right? Matchmaking, all these cool things, how to, fulfill orders automatically. So everything was quick and easy and seamless. So the marketplace started growing, and then we realized we had a big challenge. And if you think about it, I don't know how many people out there sell on Poshmark or Depop or ThreadUp or, any of those platforms where you can sell. But it takes a lot of time, right? To photograph products and write product descriptions and post them to the site. And then, if I sold it on one platform, I got to put it in another one. And that takes a lot of time, but it still kind of works when you're a smaller company or an individual. But if you're a big brand or retailer and you have tens of thousands of SKUs and millions of yards of unused fabric, how are you going to do all that in Queen of Raw's marketplace, right? So that was a big challenge. And as an entrepreneur, trust me, we're going to get challenges every day. And the fun is how you think about overcoming them, right? That's the marathon, not the sprint. So that's where now we looked at, okay, why do they have all this waste in the first place? And when we dove a little bit deeper, we realized that in many ways, big companies, and for anyone out there who wants to either work in a big company or innovate in a space around supply chain, look at how they're managing their data, not just for unused inventory, but for anything that's going on in their supply chain. A lot of times it's still the way my great-grandfather did business, right? Good old pen and paper, or maybe if they're better, a little Excel spreadsheet. And when you do things that way, this is an actual inventory management system for one of the world's biggest fashion brands, multi-billion-dollar company who shall remain nameless for obvious reasons, but this is their actual inventory management system. And when you do that, just think about how much data and information gets lost or is inaccurate, right? Because they had 10 different copies of this spreadsheet across 10 different departments. Some of them literally had handwritten notes on them. And now they're in offices that in light of COVID, they can't get into anymore. How are you going to run your business that way? So, okay, we knew that there was these big brands and retailers had a big problem. They want to participate in Queen of Raw, but it's just too ineffective this way. So we literally realized we had to build a solution. And the solution was not just a marketplace, because that's just slapping a Band-Aid on the problem, right? Giving them a place to sell their waste. How do you get to the root of the problem, understand why you got this waste, and how we can fix this waste going forward? And that's what we ended up building. So the fun is now, in addition to our marketplace, which is still growing and active on queenofraw.com, we actually built really awesome software and tools that live behind Queen of Raw. This is where we actually make a lot of our money. We sell it to the large brands and retailers, and it gets to do really cool things like digitizing all those spreadsheets, finding, culling all the data, telling them, as you see here, fun things like water, toxins, energy, and dollars saved by the actions they take participating in Queen of Raw. So just as you think about as an entrepreneur, you're going to have your problem. You're going to have the first step of what you think the solution is, and you're going to get out there with your MVP like we did with Queen of Raw, and you're just going to start testing it. And as you test it, and as you try to find product market fit, you're going to find massive challenges, but do not get discouraged. We could have stopped at Queen of Raw Marketplace and said, okay, big brands and retailers, we're not for you then. We're just going to go after the small companies and the small individuals. But we didn't. We said there's a business opportunity here. There's a big problem for these big companies. And if I can fix part of the way they do business, I can save so much water and toxins and dollars for these companies. So I'm going to build a solution. And so that's what we did. It ended up being a massive business opportunity for us. For fun, and just to take a break of me talking too much, I'll just show you a quick little, I can show you a quick little 60-second video on the software, although I'm actually kind of tempted to show you a little 60-second pitch I did instead. So, as an entrepreneur, you also need money, right? It takes money to do good work. And especially as a woman in business, and a woman in technology and supply chain and sustainability, you have to get out there and find innovative ways to raise dollars for your business. And I can tell you one of the ways we did it. So if you think you have a problem and you think you have a solution, you now got to go out and get some dollars to do it, right? You definitely got to get the customers and they bring money, but you also are going to come to a point where you need money to grow, to build technology, to pay yourself and things like that. When you hit that point, couple cool interesting things we did. One is that there are so many competitions and awards out there now for diversity, for women, for startups and sustainability in general, not to, not include the men in the conversation, right? There's a ton out there, and that is free money, free press, and free customers when you participate in these competitions. So the game changer for us as a business, I got an opportunity through a competition to pitch Ashton Kutcher, P. Diddy, and Gary Vaynerchuk on stage. The trick was I had 60 seconds to do it. Oh, I see a question and I will stop. Oh no, that's just a thumbs up, like. Okay, so if people like, we'll chat about this. So I had 60 seconds to do it. Now, when you're pitching your idea as an entrepreneur, right? You get your half an hour pitch, right? The full presentation that you do in school. You get your 7-minute pitch, right? You can even get a 4-minute pitch, but 60 seconds to tell them everything about you and your business and why they should give you all the dollars. It is one of the hardest, but the single most valuable thing I have done as an entrepreneur to date. And so actually, if you don't mind, I'm happy to show you the video for fun, just because it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It took so long, but nailing that 60-second pitch, it's literally all you sometimes need, especially at the beginning of your business, to win the dollars and win the attention. And for us, it was a game changer. So let me actually pop up that video, and let's see if you can see this, hear the sound. I will turn up my sound all the way. How do we enter full screen?
All right, Stephanie, how you feeling?
Great.
All right.
Let's do it.
Your 1 minute starts now.
Are you naked right now? You're not, because you're using fabric. It's everywhere. It's where it's supposed to be, covering things like us, and it's where it's not supposed to be, sitting in warehouses around the world waiting to be burned or buried. And that wasted fabric is destroying your drinking water. One t-shirt takes 700 gallons of water to produce. It's the #2 polluter in the world. I know this because my family has been in the fabric business for over 100 years. Queen of Raw's Marketplace helps those factories sell the $120 billion worth of unused fabric to brands and creators, keeping it out of landfill and turning that pollution into profit. We've already saved over 700 million gallons of water, and with your support, we can make that 4 billion gallons by 2025. I want my 2-year-old son to have clean water to drink and a planet to live on. My name is Stephanie Benedetto, and I'm the Queen of Raw.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big production and it was a lot of fun, but I mentioned that, and maybe I'll pause for a minute. We could take some questions before we dive into the next, but it was so valuable to me into my entrepreneurial journey, and always happy, offline, if anyone has questions about coming up with that pitch and where and how to find these competitions. But it really propelled us in our business forward, and we kind of just have kept pushing from there. Not that there aren't challenges every day, but that's the fun of it. So I will stop before we talk a little bit more about climate and fun technology and stuff like that. But any questions? If anybody has any, feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to come offline. If not, we can keep going on the slides. No questions yet? All right.
Just a comment. That was a great example of what you guys will be doing next week, right? Your individual.
Oh, so we're pitching next week?
Timing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And at the end of the day, as I was thinking of that pitch, right? And if that's what you're doing next week and thinking about, you could talk so much about the problem. You could talk so much about the solution. You could talk so much about the technology, but you have to, find that level of, obviously with the fun opening, I had a little bit of fun. I took a little bit of a risk there, but it was a calculated risk. Get attention and just tease it, right? It's not the full thing. They can go dive deeper and learn more. So anyhow, I learned a lot from doing it. Obviously it took a lot, but it was a lot of fun. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I will jump in and we can keep chatting about everything. So, you present. So I had a little 60-second video of the technology, but we'll kind of skip over it and talk a little bit. you know, when you think about sustainability, right? I know to a lot of people, it's kind of a buzzword. It's that S word that means so many things to so many people and doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day anyway. I really prefer the word circular economy because the second word there is economy. It's an economic principle, right? And if you can look, if you are passionate about sustainability, I don't know if any of you are incorporating sustainability into your business model at all. It's top of mind for a lot of businesses today. But if you think about it, a circular economy and that there needs to be an economic value created there, then it makes business sense, right? And so the way we thought about it, you think about fashion as an example and supply chains, right? You've got your raw materials, your fabrics that go into the supply chain. Then businesses design, they produce, H&M, you know, carrying all the companies, they design and produce and make the clothes you're wearing. Now, over time, the clothes you're wearing, things are going to happen to it, right? It changes and you use it. And now at the end of life, right, it eventually reaches a point of life where it becomes typically waste. Now, the beauty of circular economy is watch what happens. These raw materials have entered the stream, the circular economy circle, right? And this is the key circle. This stuff and this stuff is what you're going to see changes when you do circular economy. You have to buy all these raw materials as a business, all the fabrics, you make your stuff, and then you create a ton of waste right now, and you have to get rid of it, and you have to buy a lot more stuff. But if you actually adopt circular economy, the business model that we propose, you actually, when you have a garment, a piece of clothing that you're no longer using, right? You now, if you think about all these business models, you can recycle it, you can rent it, reuse it, repair it, redesign it. Companies can resell it. You can do all these things to your clothes, whether it's you as an individual with Depop, Poshmark, and ThreadUp, or it's big brands, you know, like Patagonia, like Nike, who are, you know, taking back things and reselling them. When you do all these activities, you actually end up having no more waste, and you end up never needing to buy more raw materials. And the amount of money that gets saved and made as a business, if you keep everything in circulation longer and you're not buying raw materials and wasting money on all this waste, your bottom line improves and your top line improves drastically. So that's the idea of circular economy, right? Is that if we keep resources in circulation for longer, we can phase out needing to buy new resources, and we can phase out having any waste. And our bottom line improves because we're more efficient as a business. And our top line improves because we have a great sustainable story to tell. People buy more, we're selling a lot, and things are just kept in circulation longer. So it's good for people. It's good for planet, it's good for profit. Any questions? I know that can get a little complicated, but that's the high level principle, I believe, of why sustainability makes economic sense. Businesses' bottom and top lines improve because of it. So, you know, just to show you a little bit, obviously as a business, if you're looking at the business as an entrepreneur that you're creating, you want to be able to show the impact that you're having. And by that impact, I mean the good that you're doing on people, the good that you're doing on planet, and the good that you're doing for businesses or your profit, right? And so we as a business started quantifying where in the world a lot of these water savings were happening, where we were having a global reach. We're now on every continent and growing. We quantified how much water our business, as just an early stage startup, we've saved over 1 billion gallons of water to date. We're just getting started. And it's actually enough clean water for 1.4 million people around the world to drink for 3 years. And I mentioned that not just because I'm really proud of what our team has done, but because you should never doubt that the actions you take as an entrepreneur, even as an early stage entrepreneur like us, when you add it up, can have a massive impact. Right? I mean, even for us too, we've already built a marketplace of over 250,000 users, and we're just getting started. And we've rescued millions of yards of fabric and saved our business enterprise companies millions of dollars. So I do believe, unlike what some people might talk about and hear about, that you can marry sustainability with the economics of it to make a business model that makes sense for everybody. You know, our business, I get this question often, right? Our business is actually doing stuff like this, like who cares? So whether you're out there deciding that you want to go build your own business to solve some of these problems, or if you want to go be an entrepreneur and go work at one of these major corporations in any industry, I do think you should think about the movements in sustainability if you're not already. Because of this, All of the brands you see here, many of whom are our company's customers, they've actually signed commitments to be more sustainable by 2030, right? And this is just in fashion, but this is across industries and around the world. They're all saying they're going to make these commitments to do better, to be good, to be more sustainable. What's really important about that is, yes, H&M and others, they're putting a stake in the ground that they're going to do good in the future. But it also means it's a business opportunity for you with that lens and that point of view to go into these big companies and show them how to do things better and differently and more efficiently and more sustainably. What's also interesting is they make these commitments, but there are actually a lot of changes in the laws going on in the world that if they don't adopt these changes, it's going to cost them a fortune in legal liability. And that matters too, right? Because in addition to them caring about sustainability or saying they care about sustainability, if they're actually going to be exposed to all these changes in the laws and legal liability, there are now issues where some banks and companies are getting derated, delisted from stock exchanges, right? If they don't have good practices. So I mention this because I think it's another reason why when you're looking at your problem to figure out why is the time now, what are the big consumer issues like sustainability that matter to the end consumers? What are the changes in the laws that matters to the business that you're thinking about, right? Why should your customers, who are they and why should they, for me, it's the big brands and retailers, why should they adopt this solution today? These are all the things you want to kind of be thinking about that play together. Sometimes with an entrepreneur, you know, it's a bit of timing and a bit of luck too, but that's how we think about it. For anyone based in New York City, I did want to mention we're part of the New York Circular City Initiative with the companies you see here, right? And so there are big companies, Goldman Sachs, Unilever, Cisco, H&M, who are standing behind these kinds of initiatives and can support any of your future business ideas in this area, and big partners. So I kind of wanted to end with this, and then I will stop and we can really just relax and chat a little bit. One is, a lot of people always say with sustainability, it means so many things to so many people. How do you know how to talk about it? I kind of come back to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We are partners with the United Nations, and they come up with these 17 topics, frameworks for how to think about sustainability and to make goals so that you as a business in whatever you're doing, whether sustainability is at your core or not of what your business is, think about how your solution can either help with poverty around the world, with hunger, with good health and well-being, gender equality. These are very broad topics, decent work and economic growth. So you may not even know that if you're not directly in climate change, you may not even know that your business is having an impact on sustainability. But if it falls into one or more of these buckets, it actually is. And you should mention that in your business proposal, in your pitch. If you in some way impact, right, decent work and economic growth for certain disenfranchised groups, if you are doing something better for cities and communities, mention the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and look at these frameworks, because I think it will be a huge business advantage for you in how you present your solution. And the final thing, which you all know, right, as an entrepreneur, brands and retailers are starting to care about these issues and looking towards a better future for everyone, but so are you as consumers. Millennials and Gen Zs, this latest McKinsey report, everybody's top choices when they buy things matters about, yes, price points matter, how much things cost, but also knowing, is this company good to employees? Do they pay their workers? Are they doing good for the environment? Even on a general high sense, it matters. So it really does. And so I kind of just wanted to obviously end and give you my information if I can be helpful in any way on your entrepreneurial journey. Like I kind of mentioned in my 60-second pitch, I'm doing what I'm doing for my children. I now have two. My 2-year-old is now a 5-year-old from that pitch, and I have a 1-year-old. I want them to, I want to change the world for them and future generations. And I think we can do that in a massively economically profitable way, and that you all have the power right now more than ever to do that too. So yeah, just my little thoughts and words of wisdom. Thanks, Stacy, for that comment, my friend Stacy. But yeah, would love to dive in, time permitting, in a little bit to hear a little bit about how everyone is thinking about either if they want to ideate on what they're pitching in their business ideas, think about how you fit into the bigger work at play with sustainability, any challenges that you're experiencing or that I'm experiencing now, more than happy to talk about that, because obviously being an entrepreneur, it's not easy. It takes all of us together. I would not be where I am not, if not for obviously Stacy and others in our community who have been supporters and empowering each other. So it is the time to do this, and obviously to have each other together is. So yeah, let's dive in. I mean, anyone feeling comfortable want to come off and either tell me, yeah, go for it, Laura. Cool.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to say I love your mission and your whole brand. I'm actually pitching next week, not a similar idea, but it will involve clothing sustainability.
Cool.
And I'd love to share with you just like as some for feedback. But so my idea was to create a clothing line that I would take unused fabrics, like donated clothes, and turn it into like revamping like a whole wardrobe to make it like a boutique experience. That way, like, oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. You got to grab it.
Sorry, my roommate had a phone call.
No
But
worries.
my goal was to make thrifting a boutique experience, because in high school I went to school where there were a lot of boutiques, but they were too expensive, like $100 for a shirt. And as teenagers, who could afford that? Like, you know, we don't have a big girl paycheck. So
Yep.
I was thinking of making a boutique where it would be affordable and also sustainable.
I think that's great. I mean, you're thinking about it the right way, right? Like what's out there already, what is working, what isn't working. So many people, and you might hear like tell you, oh, you know, fashion, textiles, sustainability, it's a crowded marketplace. Don't try to get into there. Let me tell you, you know, you can learn so much from the players and the businesses who came before you. See what works well, and you can do that and not have to spend the money they spent figuring it out. But you can also learn about the mistakes they made and what they didn't do well. And that's where you can have an opportunity. And obviously, you just kind of said that, right? You said the price point wasn't working, the experience wasn't right. And that's where your unique competitive advantage is coming in. And to be quite honest, I mean, millennials and Gen Zs, you all have the biggest purchasing power as a generation, right, in the world. So that is power with the dollars to act and to have adoption around this solution. So I think it's a great idea. The one thing I would highly recommend, obviously because of my point of view and my lens, figure out, you know, on average for every shirt or article of clothing that you, and I'm happy to help you with this offline, that you take back in, what's the impact you're having, right? How many pounds of clothes, if you want to do it by how many have you diverted from landfill? How much water and toxins have you saved by people reusing and not making new? All that kind of cool stuff. And there's some great data out there that I can point you to. So that could be a good pieces. And then plus how much money people are saving and making by doing this, right? So I think you're right on the money and starting to think about that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, you bet. Anyone else want to either share what they're pitching, ask any questions about challenges, going through anything right now? I'm more than happy to chat about it. Otherwise, I can certainly dive in as well and talk some more about it. But no one else? You know, I mean, let's think about kind of some of the other challenges that are out there. And I honestly, I would love to hear what other people are working on, because, you know, it makes a big difference to me as an entrepreneur. What are the challenges and opportunities that you see, whether it's in my industry or elsewhere? Because at the end of the day, there are also in some of the solutions that you might be thinking about and building, right? What I learned as well is how can you leverage partnerships and other people who had solutions that you could use that may or may not have been obvious at first, but that do end up making sense. So when we did that competition with Ashton Kutcher, it actually was an opportunity that came through WeWork. My company was working out of a WeWork at the time. It was while WeWork under Adam Newman was booming, and they loved what we were doing. And a lot of people didn't really understand, you know, why would WeWork be passionate about fashion and textiles? And, you know, well, there were a lot of reasons why we liked each other and we wanted to work together. But if you think about it, WeWork at the time had a building on every block of Manhattan and everywhere in the world. They were building these buildings and filling the interiors of spaces with interior design. Now imagine if they could leverage locally sourced and found materials for carpeting, for furniture, all locally sourced, dead stock, recycled, sustainable stuff through Queen of Raw. What a cool story that would be, plus how much money they would save to make a really cool high-end interior out of discounted materials. So, not an obvious connection to a lot of people at first, but a partnership that ends up being massively valuable to my business, both personally and professional reasons. So, thinking about A, what's already out there that you can leverage and use, and B, maybe the not obvious, but the really interesting customer acquisition opportunities that you have that sit next to you, that you have a competitive advantage to go after. So it's a cool thing to be thinking about when you're doing your SWOT analysis. Anybody out there kind of leaning a little more, because we didn't get too into it, but I'm happy to, on the technology side and looking at a solution that leverages some kind of technology, or thinking about whether it's a marketplace, software, machine learning, blockchain. If anyone has questions about that, let me know, because I'm very passionate too about not just technology for technology's sake, but when it makes business sense because it does something of significant value to solving the problem, right? If there is anyone out there pushing in technology more, don't just build technology for technology's sake. A lot of people do, and don't get me wrong, people make money doing it, but you could go out and spend a fortune building the coolest technology, but if it doesn't answer someone's pain point or problem, then it doesn't really help. Yeah, does someone have a question? Was that, on tech?
I just had a quick question. How did your business go about COVID-19?
Yeah,
That's
a
what.
massive important question, right? I mean, COVID-19. So, to a lot of people, it was a lot of people. First off, obviously, personally, I hope everyone is healthy and safe, right? That's all that. But what it did, by us all being at home right now, it brought these issues of people and planet and sustainability and waste and broken supply chains to the front of everyone's mind. Back when I first started looking at this issue, I started even just looking at it in 2014. I would talk to people and they'd be like, what? Or it's a nice to have, but not a have to have, right? We go through COVID and now everybody's supply chains are impacted. You can't get the masks when you need it. Your Amazon order is not on time. You have to order on Fresh Direct to get food, and it may or may not, right? You're seeing supply chains, and when they're stressed and broken, right? A lot of challenges, but it also means that there's opportunities to solve that. So to be honest, obviously a lot of businesses are going through a lot right now, trying to figure out how to survive if they can. But for us, COVID has been, for lack of a better word, a huge opportunity. Our business, everybody's at home, sourcing online, digitally, right? So our e-commerce site grew 123% quarter over quarter with not a penny spent in PR marketing or advertising. It just started growing like crazy. And because of these issues of sustainability, broken supply chain, everybody needing to communicate on the computers online, for our big enterprise customers, it forced the hand, and they had to come work with us, even if they were resistant at first or saying no at first to adopting these kinds of software solutions. So I think with COVID, huge opportunity to help businesses or build your own business to figure out not only how to survive through a pandemic, which inevitably, unfortunately, we'll have another one in the future, figure out how to grow through it, and not just survive, but how do you thrive? And I think looking at what is the future going to look like, or what is the future you want to look like right now, right? For me, obviously, I want my children, as I kind of mentioned, I want them to have clean water and clothes that aren't toxic to wear, but I want to build for that future. And so a supply chain that is more on demand, more local and more sustainable. And what are the solutions? And there are millions out there, and some of you maybe are working on them already, that can support that. And that's where that time and opportunity comes in, I think. And a lot of people will get discouraged by COVID and might think that they can't go out on their own and build a business, or now is not the time, or, all these businesses are going under. This is the best time, I think, and the best businesses, actually, statistics show, come out of depressions and on times of uncertainty, right? Massively powerful businesses do. So, yeah. Do you have one you're thinking about, or was this just kind of a general question?
It was just a general question,
Okay.
because I feel like either businesses in general, either the way that I've seen it is like either they're going through a lot or they're doing really well. So like I
Yeah.
was kind of just wondering like what your point of
Yeah.
view on that was.
Well, and also a lot of people wonder as a startup, how am I going to compete with the big players, right? And for me, you think of the typical David and Goliath story, and a lot of people who looked at us before we had the software, when we were just e-commerce marketplace, they're like, how are you going to take on Alibaba and Amazon, which actually owns fabric.com, right? Like, how are you going to take on these behemoths and giants? But you, especially in a time of uncertainty as an entrepreneur, we have a huge advantage over Alibaba and Amazon. We're young, we're small, we can iterate, we've got the newest, hottest technology, and we can offer and build something that they just can't, or they can't do it quickly. They got the dollars, but they don't have everything else in place. And ultimately, eventually, maybe they want to acquire us, right? Or maybe we end up competing, and who knows what the future is. But again, it's an opportunity as a smaller entrepreneur to go up against the big people today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. My pleasure. Happy to. Yeah. Good question. Anyone else want to chat either about what they're thinking? Any family background? Yeah. Cool.
Oh, I wanted to ask a question. In terms of like co-founders, did you ever like have a co-founder, and like how'd you go around finding people like like-minded individuals to like help you with your business and stuff?
That is an awesome question too. And let me lay it down for you, my experience with co-founders. So the first startup, I actually had a startup. I didn't get into it prior to Queen of Raw. And my co-founder was my best friend from college. And because she was my best friend and we were going to start this business, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it for the longest time because I was afraid of ruining our friendship. And she said, no, it's not going to ruin our friendship. But so we actually negotiated a 60-page partnership agreement. The lawyer and me couldn't help it, right? So if there's ever an issue, we look to the books. What we did wrong was, and I should have known this as a lawyer, we made it a 50-50 partnership. And if something is 50-50, you're going to have a point at which you have a stalemate, right? And how are you going to decide something? And it became an issue when I was ready the business was growing, we were getting bigger customers, it was time to raise the money and go build factories and do big things. And she liked keeping it kind of a smaller company, and she didn't want to do that. And we got stuck. We didn't know what to do. And I say that because I learned a lot from that experience. We are still friends, but know when you're going into it, how to do it and how to do it right and what to talk about. We didn't talk about the issue of what would happen as much when things were 50-50. We wanted it to be equal, but at the same time, it's kind of hard when it's equal. And we also didn't talk about the big picture vision of what our ultimate goal and vision and dream was with the company. And it came to a point where that was an issue. And so now in my current company, I do have a co-founder. He happens to be a technology co-founder that I met at General Assembly in New York, which is a big technology hub for anyone looking for a technical co-founder. He's amazing. I saw a job posting he had on a board in 2014. Something about it resonated with me. And I asked him to meet at a Starbucks in New York. We sat there. I told him about this problem that I described to you. He actually came from a family background in fashion and textiles, so he understood this, but he had been on Wall Street in technology. And I talked about kind of what I thought about the marketplace, maybe what we could do and what my big picture vision was. And we did not sign a partnership agreement right away. We started working on some projects together on a contract consultant basis. We got to know each other better. We realized that we worked well together, that we had a similar aligned vision, and we've been working together ever since. And we are not 50-50 in the company. So those are just some learnings about what to think through, what not to do, what to talk about early on. You also need to make sure that that person, that co-founder, is at the right time in their life. Because being an entrepreneur is obviously high rewards, but high risk. And that person needs to be either in a position to be able to take on for a time period that risk. So when it comes to co-founders, they're like, significant others and family. You are in theory, quote unquote, in bed with them for a long haul. I'm hoping to take my company to acquisition or public. So you want to be with someone committed for the long ride and to feel each other out and take time to do that. The other thing I'll mention is in terms of hiring teams, it's critical as an entrepreneur, right? You want to build a team and a network and a community, but you also have to have the ability to know when something isn't a right fit. So make sure before you start hiring a ton of people full-time in your business, get to know each other. And this isn't because you want to test people and fire them. They want to get to know you as much as you want to get to know them. They may not love working there, especially as a startup, when you have to do wear a million different hats, and it's a very different dynamic than working at a big company, right? So take some months to get to know potential hires, to work on some projects together, either taking on some interns, we leverage interns or independent contractors for a 3-month period before we make decisions, right? And that's been really helpful as well. So just some thoughts that come top of mind, but yeah. Cool. Good questions though. Anyone else having any challenges on their entrepreneurial journey or questions in how they're thinking about things, let me know. I can tell you, if anyone's not coming off yet, one of my biggest learnings, one thing I did not do is, even though I understand business, I had a legal background, I didn't spend as much time as I should have learning the ins and outs of financial modeling. And the good news is there are a lot of tools out there that I can direct you to that help you do that. But now I've spent a lot of time, and it took me more time. So to the extent you can get, and you may already be doing this in this program and elsewhere, getting some understanding, even on a high level, of how to model out the business. And it doesn't have to be complicated. The biggest mistake I made is the first business model I built for Queen of Raw. I mean, it was like 15 sheets deep. It was with going from now to infinity and beyond. Like, it was a beast. And it's good to know I had a big picture thinking, but it wasn't very helpful day to day to running the business. Simplify how you run your business. Look at what your key levers are. What are the big things that are driving this business, and model for that? Because at the end of the day, the small stuff is just that. It's small stuff. It's not going to have a big impact. And the other thing is, as an entrepreneur and with modeling and thinking about your business and your growth, just know that the assumptions you make are just that, assumptions. And so many times investors talk to you, right? What's your 5 to 10 year growth plan? And how do you want to exit? And you want to have an answer for that, because at least they want to know that you're thinking about the big picture, but you don't need to be right. In fact, the one thing you know is you're probably wrong. Because when I modeled my business to start, it was all about e-commerce. Little did I know software and integration and subscription fees were going to be a huge part of my business. But you learn that and you change it as you go. And that's obviously part of the fun and the uniqueness of entrepreneurism. So yeah, just one other thought. But anyone else want to chat? I know we're running low on time, but if anyone has any questions, if there's anything I didn't answer, I'm happy to, and to make myself available in any way.
Hi, I have a question.
Yep, you bet.
I was wondering, and I know this is a huge question, so take your time thinking about it, but I guess, what was the greatest lesson or the most valuable lesson to you personally that you learned, whether it's about yourself or about your business, throughout your journey?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And I've thought about it a lot, right? Like, the ideas of, if I could do it over, would I have done it differently? Or is there something that I would tell my kids, right, to do that I had learned? I can tell you the biggest thing that I went to an all women's school growing up. And I mentioned that because it was really a unique educational experience, 14 years at all women's school. And they actually encouraged us to be entrepreneurs, to think differently, to build businesses that you want to go change the world, to take risks, not to be afraid. And they actually started training us from like second grade in how to do public speaking skills. And that has been such a valuable thing for me as a business, and something I'm trying to push even my 5-year-old to practice with me some speaking. Not that you have to give some formal presentation all the time, but just the idea of having confidence in what you're speaking about, and how to just kind of tell a story and articulate. I can't tell you how many times I've seen investors invest in some of what I think are the most not impactful, not valuable businesses, but the way the person told it was so engaging and so exciting that was like 80% of getting him there. So, I think especially for women, having an opportunity to practice how you tell that story, how you share the big picture vision, and not being afraid. A lot of people get nervous about intellectual property. And if I get my idea out there, somebody's going to copy me, right? The beauty with entrepreneurism is you're always moving forward and growing and iterating and changing. So if you're not afraid to get your idea out there, we got our website up as a marketplace, and I had like 10 products to sell. I kid you not, literally 10 products, but I got a website up. I started getting a story out there. We got some cool imagery, and I had a point of view. And we just saw people coming and coming and coming like crazy. And so, okay, I knew there was something there. A lot of people might have said, don't put your website up till it's perfect and it's ready and you got all the product. No, get your MVP up and out there. If anyone's trying to copy you, they're already copying. It's one, because it's probably a good idea. And two, they're copying a version that you already put out there and you're already on to the next. So they're already behind and copying you. So let them keep copying you while you're, building the next part of your solution and growing. So don't be afraid about people stealing your IP. It may happen, but again, you keep iterating and moving and they're always going to be in the dust behind you. So get out there and not be afraid. That's what I would say. Yeah.
I had a quick question.
Yep.
I just want to say I loved everything. It was like so motivational, inspirational. I loved everything. I did have a question about, like with businesses, especially when it's like into fashion and stuff like that, there's always going to be like hate comments or stuff like that. And I was wondering, did you ever feel a moment where like you doubted your business, that you weren't going to be successful? And like, how did you go about that situation?
Without question, you are going to have moments, and I got some gray hairs to prove it. Well, white hairs, but yeah, that you're going to think like, this may not happen. This may not happen, or I might be doing this wrong, or maybe I said something I shouldn't, or I made a mistake. It's going to happen. But, the chances are, someone once told me this, and I found it was really interesting. The highs are really never as high, but the lows are also never as low. And it was an interesting way to think about things, because, you feel when you have wins, like they're the greatest things in the world and they should be celebrated, but also know that the lows, and when you feel like you made the biggest mistake of your life, you lost the biggest client of your life, you said something impressed that it might come back to bite you, all this stuff, it's never that low or as big a deal as you think it is. You're going to have the naysayers. You are going to have, and we've had everyone from customers, who didn't get it, no, left and right, to investors who didn't believe in it and want to invest, to, you're going to people online some people challenge us as they don't think that rescuing this unused inventory is sustainable. And that because I sell leather and skin on my platform, we're not sustainable. Okay. Controversy is actually good because it means it's being talked about and people are passionate and people have opinions, and you're not going to be building a business for everyone. If you were, it doesn't make business sense, right? You're building the business for the certain people. So you're not trying to be for everyone. You're trying to be for those who believe it, for whom this solution works and who get it. And if you can support and nurture those and really listen to your customers, the ones who are paying, the real customers, that's whose opinions and voices matter. And it's not to say you shouldn't listen to what's out there, learn from the mistakes, learn from the no's. We did too, but also support and believe in when you see the yeses, right? And it takes time. Entrepreneurship always takes 10 times as long, if not more, than you think it will. Trust me, it's like that overnight success, 10 years in the making, right? We've been, in theory, looking at this since 2014, although we didn't launch till 2018. So it is a marathon, not a sprint. And, it's all about pushing forward and learning from the mistakes. That's the best thing I could say. Yeah.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, you started basically in 2014, but you didn't really launch until 2018.
It makes sense.
I think one of the biggest challenges I have with students is they're like, because, just the whole world that we live in today is just so fast paced, and it seems like success is overnight, but that's never really the case. It takes work and it takes time and patience. I'm just so happy you said that.
Yeah, it does. But I can also tell you, despite all the challenges we're talking about and where the world is today, it is so much fun. And honestly, aside from my family, my children, it is the greatest thing that I have done. I still hope, to take this all the way. I acknowledge and realize that, things may happen along the way, but enjoy the journey, because it is about the journey too. And I wouldn't have gotten where I am today if not from learning from my prior startup, right? And the experiences I had there with my co-founders. So if you're going through challenges right now, that is where you learn and what takes you to the next phase. So. And any way I can help, I'm here. Feel free to use me as a resource. And I'm so glad to have had the time with you. And thank you all.
Thank you so much. Can we give a round of applause? You can unmute.
Thank you all, and go out there and change the world. The time is now.
Thank you, and have a wonderful evening, and I'll be in touch with you.
You bet. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.